If your baby wakes up 5 times a night and you're asking yourself what you did wrong, I need you to stop and hear this first. You have not failed. Your brain is worn down by lack of sleep, and in that state, it's easy to believe every problem is your fault. But the truth is, a newborn's sleep is not a test of whether you're a good parent. It's a biological and psychological process. Almost no parent is ever taught this before they walk into the delivery room. If you're living far from family, far from home, no grandmother, no mother nearby to help out at 3 in the morning. What I'm about to share today might be the closest thing to a companion you have right now. Stay with me through this whole video, because I'm not just going to talk about how to get your baby to sleep well. I'm going to talk about what's actually happening in your mind, in your baby's mind, and in the invisible bond forming between the two of you. Right in the middle of these most exhausting nights. My name is Emma. I'm a pediatric occupational therapist, and I'm also a mom of 2. I've sat in the exact spot you might be sitting in right now, holding a crying baby, not knowing if I was doing it right or wrong, feeling lonely even with my husband right there beside me. That's why I make these videos, not to teach you a rigid formula, but to help you understand what's happening inside your tiny baby, and inside yourself too. Before we go on, I want you to know there's a free resource in the description below. It covers your baby's developmental milestones from 0 to 12 months. You can print it out and use it throughout your baby's first year. And if you're the kind of parent looking for someone who understands how hard this is, subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss new videos every week. Now let me take you inside the mind of a newborn. Most parents, when their baby is first born, carry a quiet belief that if their baby isn't sleeping well, it's because they're not good enough, not patient enough, or haven't found the secret that someone else already found. This belief weighs especially heavy on families living abroad, far from their home culture, where raising a child is usually shared across generations under one roof, when it's just the 2 of you. No grandparents, no aunts or uncles nearby. Every night you wake up carries a psychological weight that's double, even triple, just being tired. It carries a feeling of isolation. And that feeling of isolation, psychologically, is one of the biggest factors behind postpartum depression, not just in mothers, in fathers too. So before we get into the 7 things that help your baby sleep better, I want you to hold on to one single truth. Your baby is not waking up at night to punish you, to test you, or because you did something wrong in a past life. They wake up because their brain, at this stage, simply isn't wired yet to sleep through the night the way adults do. Understanding this won't make you less tired, but it will make you less hard on yourself. And that self-blame, trust me, drains your mental energy far more than any sleepless night ever could. Now let's talk about the first thing, and also the thing that confuses new parents the most, telling the difference between when your baby is truly awake and when they're just in light sleep. This isn't just a technical tip, it's an important psychological lesson about learning to observe your baby instead of reacting out of panic. Newborns begin every sleep cycle with light sleep. During this stage, they might move their arms and legs, make noise, even look like they're grimacing or smiling, but their eyes are closed, and if you look closely, you'll see their eyeballs moving under the lids. Many parents, especially first-timers, see this and immediately pick their baby up, because their protective instinct kicks in hard. But that action, even though it comes from deep love, can accidentally wake a baby who is on their way into deep sleep. Psychologically, this is where you have to learn one of the hardest skills of parenting. The skill of waiting inside uncertainty. You'll have to sit there, watch your baby move, make sounds, and wonder whether you should step in. That feeling is deeply uncomfortable. because parental instinct is wired to react instantly to any sign of distress in your child. But if you learn to pause, wait a few seconds. Watch to see if your baby is really awake and really crying. You're teaching your own brain something valuable. Not every sound from your baby is an emergency signal. This skill will stay with you through your whole parenting journey. From these newborn nights, all the way to when your child turns 3, turns 5, and starts learning to handle their own small emotions without needing you to rescue them right away. Newborns sleep in cycles of about 40 minutes, and between each cycle, they usually wake briefly. This is completely normal physiologically. It's not a sign of a difficult baby or a baby with a problem. The issue only starts when parents, out of worry, turn every brief waking moment into a big event. Picking the baby up, feeding them, rocking them back to sleep from scratch, and without meaning to, teaching their baby's young brain that every sleep transition is a chance to be held. This doesn't mean you should let your baby cry it out. It means you learn to wait, watch to see if they're really hungry, really uncomfortable, or simply in between 2 sleep cycles. There are usually 3 real reasons a newborn wakes up: hunger, discomfort, like a dirty diaper or being too hot or too cold, or because they've had enough sleep and aren't tired anymore. Learning to read these signals is learning to build a relationship based on careful observation, not panicked reflex. The second thing I want to talk about is the sleep environment. And behind it is a psychological lesson about controlling what you can control. In a stage of life where most things feel completely out of your hands. The ideal room temperature for a newborn is around 19 to 22 degrees Celsius. If you can't keep the room in that range, dress your baby to match the room temperature, and use a thermometer so you're not guessing. This might sound like a small technical detail, but it actually carries a much bigger psychological meaning. Parenting in these early months is an experience soaked in uncertainty. You don't know why your baby is crying. You don't know if they're full enough. You don't know if you're doing it right. In the middle of all that uncertainty, having a few things you can measure and control precisely, like room temperature, light, sound, gives you a sense of psychological safety. That's why I always tell new parents to invest in a room thermometer and a sleep sack with a clear temperature guide, not because the device is magic, but because it removes some of the guesswork. It removes one of the hundreds of tiny decisions you have to make every day while running on empty. The room also needs to be dark enough that you couldn't read a book in it. At this newborn stage, this has nothing to do with circadian rhythm. Babies don't produce enough of that day-night regulating hormone until around 3 to 5 months old. The reason we want the room dark is to keep your baby from getting stimulated by light, toys, or a window during those in-between moments in their sleep cycles. This is also a beautiful metaphor for your role as a parent at this stage. You don't need to do too much. You don't need to teach your baby anything complicated. The most important thing you can do is create an environment quiet enough, safe enough, for your baby to find their own way back to sleep naturally. There's a certain humility in accepting that your role right now isn't to actively step in. It's to actively step back and protect the space for your baby to self-regulate. As for sound, I know there's a lot of hand-me-down advice that newborns need to learn to sleep in noise, so they won't grow dependent on quiet later. I have to be honest, that's not true, and it also reflects a psychological pressure that many parents, especially parents abroad without family support, put on themselves. The pressure to make their baby tough, easygoing, so they don't disrupt a busy adult life. But no one, not even us adults, sleeps well in a room with sudden loud noise. Newborns have a very strong startle reflex, and because they spend most of their sleep in light sleep, they're far more likely to be jolted awake by sudden sound than adults are. Using a white noise machine, steady and continuous, like even rainfall or radio static, isn't about making your baby dependent. It's about creating a sound buffer, so they're not startled awake by a door closing or a car outside. Avoid nature sounds with shifting rhythms, like birds chirping or crashing ocean waves, because sudden changes in volume can trigger the very startle reflex you're trying to avoid. Now I want to pause for a moment and talk about what I think is the most important part of this entire video. More important than room temperature or white noise. It's the feeling of safety and how it's built from the very first days of a baby's life. When we swaddle a baby or use a sleep sack that wraps them snugly, we're doing more than just keeping them warm. We're recreating the tight, enclosed feeling of the womb, where they lived for 9 months before being born. To a newborn, the world outside the belly is vast, loud, full of new sensations that can feel completely overwhelming. Swaddling creates a physical boundary. It helps your baby feel held. It softens the sense of free falling that their own free arms and legs can trigger through the startle reflex. This is exactly where attachment theory starts to matter in your everyday life. Attachment theory, developed by psychologist John Bowlby, and later is expanded by Mary Ainsworth, says that a child's earliest experiences of having their needs met consistently shape what's called their internal working model of the world, whether the world is safe or not, whether other people can be trusted or not. A baby who is swaddled warmly, placed in a dark, quiet room, responded to when hungry, when uncomfortable, is slowly learning the first and most important lesson of their life. This world, even when it's uncomfortable sometimes, is a place where my needs will be heard. That lesson isn't taught with words, because your baby is far too young to understand language. It's taught through your actions, repeated night after night. This also explains why the type of sleep sack you choose matters so much. For example, one that keeps the arms down at the sides instead of raised up. When the arms are gently held in place, your baby's startle reflex is less likely to trigger the moment you set them down in the crib, helping them carry that feeling of safety continuously, from your arms into the crib, instead of being jolted awake right at that moment of transfer. It's a small detail, but it reflects a much bigger principle. A gentle transition, not a sudden one, is the key to a newborn feeling safe, all day and all night. I know a lot of parents worry that if they respond too quickly, too often, they'll make their baby spoiled, dependent, unable to become independent. This is one of the most common and most damaging psychological misunderstandings in newborn parenting. At this stage, a baby's brain has absolutely no capacity to manipulate a parent, the way an older child might. A newborn cries because that's the only language they have to communicate a need. Responding to that need doesn't create unhealthy dependence. Quite the opposite. It builds the foundation for future independence. Decades of developmental psychology research have shown that children who form a secure attachment with their parents in the first year of life tend to be more confident, better at regulating their emotions, and paradoxically, more independent as they grow up, compared to children whose attachment experiences were inconsistent or neglected. So when you wake up at 2 a.m. to feed your baby, and you feel so exhausted you just want to cry, I want you to know that small act, getting out of bed one more time, is a brick in the psychological foundation your child will carry for the rest of their life. That doesn't mean you have to be perfect every single time. There will be nights you feel frustrated, lose your patience, set your baby down in the crib a little more firmly because you're so tired. That's human, and it doesn't destroy the attachment you're building. Secure attachment isn't built from absolute perfection. It's built from the frequency and consistency of you coming back, again and again, to respond to your child. I want to say a bit more about this because I know many parents, especially those raising a child in a country that isn't their homeland. Carry a double layer of guilt. They feel guilty that their child isn't growing up near grandparents, the way their home culture expects. They feel guilty because sometimes they wish their baby would just sleep better so they could rest, and they feel guilty about that very wish, believing that a good parent would never feel so tired that they'd wish their child needed them a little less. I need you to hear this clearly. Wanting to rest does not make you a bad parent. It makes you human, with completely normal biological limits. Your mental health is not a luxury in this parenting journey. It's the foundation that lets you keep responding to your child consistently and warmly. A parent who is exhausted to the point of losing their own emotional regulation will struggle to be the steady source of safety their child needs. This is why I always stress how important it is to keep nighttime routines simple and low stimulation. When your baby wakes to feed at night, keep the lights dim. Avoid turning on the TV. Avoid too much talking. This doesn't just help your baby fall back asleep more easily, physiologically. It also helps you conserve your own psychological energy. Every time you keep things simple, feed, change the diaper, feed again, put them down, you're protecting your own capacity to recover for the next day. Parenting isn't a sprint. It's a marathon that lasts for years, and you need to learn to conserve your energy from the very first months. Now let's talk about a psychological concept that I don't think enough newborn sleep videos actually explain clearly. Being overtired. Newborns usually need to go back to sleep after about 45 to 120 minutes of being awake. That's a very short window, much shorter than most new parents expect. When a baby misses that window, their body starts releasing cortisol, the stress hormone, as a compensating mechanism to keep them alert. Paradoxically, this makes falling asleep harder, not easier. This is why sometimes the more tired your baby gets, the harder they are to settle, the more they fuss and cry. It's not because your baby is stubborn. It's because their nervous system has crossed the threshold of being able to self-regulate and is now running on cortisol instead of melatonin. Understanding this mechanism lets you see your baby's fussing through a different lens, a lens of biological understanding instead of behavioral judgment. When your baby cries hard in the evening, especially during what's often called the witching hour, Bawsy, usually starting around 2 weeks old, your baby isn't trying to bother you on purpose. Their young nervous system is overloaded by everything from a long day: light, sound, sensation. And the evening is when all that built-up stimulation spills out as crying. This is actually a completely natural form of stress release for a newborn's nervous system. Not a sign of anything seriously wrong, even though I understand that in the middle of it, it can leave you feeling panicked and helpless. Another psychological concept I want to introduce is habituation, which I touched on briefly earlier. When a baby is carried around all day, passed from one person to another, placed in an environment full of constant sound and movement, their brain has to work non-stop to filter out that stimulation just to fall asleep. This is a quiet form of cognitive work, but it drains a huge amount of a newborn's neurological energy. As a result, even if they seem to be asleep, that sleep is usually lighter, less restorative, and your baby often wakes up in a fussier mood. This explains why sometimes you take your baby out for a whole day, thinking they'll be tired and sleep better that night. But the exact opposite happens. It's not that you did anything wrong by taking them out. Life still has to go on. But if you can, try to keep most of your baby's naps and nighttime sleep in a quiet, dark space where they're less likely to be woken by other people. I want to spend a little time talking about pacifiers, not just as a tool, but as an interesting psychological symbol of self-soothing. Sucking is one of the strongest innate calming mechanisms in a newborn. tied to the parasympathetic nervous system, the system that helps the body relax and settle down. When you give your baby a pacifier, you're not cheating or creating an unhealthy dependence. You're giving them a tool to regulate their own nervous system, a skill they'll gradually internalize and grow into a more complex, self-soothing ability as they get older. If you're breastfeeding, experts usually recommend waiting until around 6 weeks old to introduce a pacifier, to make sure breastfeeding is well established first and to avoid nipple confusion in the early stage, and to keep your baby from relying on it as the only way to fall asleep later on. Many families choose to wean off the pacifier around 6 months old, or when they start introducing a clearer sleep schedule. Now let me tie all of these pieces together, because I don't want you to walk away from this video with just a checklist of 7 technical tips. I want you to walk away with a shift in how you see this entire stage of parenthood. Every night you wake up, every time you pause to watch your baby before deciding whether to pick them up, every time you keep the room dark and quiet, you're taking part in a wordless conversation with your child. A conversation that's teaching them the world is safe, that their needs matter, that someone is there whenever they need them. At the same time, you're learning a lesson of your own, a lesson in patience, in accepting uncertainty, in forgiving yourself when nothing goes perfectly. If you're raising your child far from home, without grandparents nearby to take a night shift, I want you to know what you're doing is even more remarkable. You're building an entire support system from scratch, often with just one partner, sometimes completely on your own. Don't hesitate to look for community, whether through social media, through parent groups who share your language where you live, or even through videos like this one. That feeling of being understood, of knowing someone else is going through the same sleepless nights, is a powerful psychological medicine. Don't underestimate it. I also want to remind you that there's no single formula that's right for every baby. The 7 things I shared today, make sure your baby is truly awake before picking them up. Keep the room cool. Keep the room dark. Keep the noise steady. Swaddle or use the right sleep sack. Keep things low stimulation during night feeds, and avoid letting your baby get overtired. These are general principles, grounded in an understanding of newborn physiology and psychology. But your child is their own individual, with their own temperament, their own pace of development. Some babies are more sensitive to light, some need more skin-to-skin contact to feel safe. Your role isn't to apply these principles mechanically. It's to use them like a map while you learn to read your own child. Because no one in this world, including me, will understand your baby better than you will, after a few weeks of close, attentive observation. And if there's a night when you feel completely worn out, like you can't go on for one more minute, give yourself permission to set your baby down somewhere safe. Step out of the room for a few minutes. Breathe, and come back when you feel calmer. That's not abandoning your child. That's taking care of your own nervous system, so you can keep being the steady source of safety your baby needs. No parent can give their child something they don't have themselves, and calm is no different. You can't hand your baby calm if you yourself are running on empty, with no rest at all. I know around 2 weeks old, many babies enter a period of intense fussiness that I call the witching hour. If your baby is going through that right now, remember, this is a completely normal developmental stage, not a sign that something is wrong, and it will pass. I have a separate video with strategies for getting through that difficult stretch. The link will be in the description below if you need more specific support for that stage. I also have a video on activities to keep your baby entertained when they're awake and happy, so you can make the most of those precious alert moments together. Before we wrap up, I want you to take away just one thing from this video, if nothing else. The relationship between you and your baby is not measured by how many hours they sleep each night. It's measured by your presence, by the fact that you keep coming back again and again. Even when you're exhausted, even when you're not sure you're doing it right, your child won't remember these specific nights when they grow up. But their body, their nervous system, will carry the imprint of the safety you built, quietly, patiently, night after night. If this video helped you, hit like so. I know this content is valuable to you. And if you're looking for more on the psychology of raising a child, on understanding your baby more deeply, so parenting feels a little less lonely, a little less overwhelming, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss new videos every week. Thank you for staying with me today, in the middle of all the busy work of being a parent. See you next week, with more I want to share with you.